There is nothing like moving far from home that can give you insights into who you are, where you came from, and where you are once you get there. Things you might have never noticed about your personality, your mindset, and your culture are often brought into sharp focus once you put yourself in a state halfway or all the way across a continent. And very often, the people and the culture you adopt become more clearly defined. You may wind up being a better observer of, maybe even a more recognized ambassador for your new home than many who lived their whole lives there. In the case of MC Taylor, he did move across the continent, from California to North Carolina, and he has his finger on the pulse of Southern culture like few others. His frequent collaborator Phil Cook said goodbye to his native Wisconsin more than 10 years ago also, moving to the Old North State close to the same time that his future bandmate did. Phil, too, brought an outsider's perspective that proved invaluable in his understanding and embrace of the people, music, and culture of the South. MC Taylor and Phil Cook started working together within a day of meeting each other. And while Phil frequently leads his own band, he is also regularly on tour and on records with His Golden Messenger, the band that Taylor founded in 2007. You'll hear from both of them, along with new music from Phil Cook and from His Golden Messenger, including a live version of a track from the new album Terms of Surrender, in this episode of Southern Songs and Stories.
Southern Songs and Stories is produced in partnership with Grassroots Radio, WNCW, and the Osiris Podcast Network, and is available wherever you get your podcast and at WNCW.org. Soon, WNCW will celebrate its 30th birthday, and the on-air portion of our Fall Fund Drive begins on our birthday, October 13th, and runs all that week. We're going to be offering our live compilation, Crowd Around the Mic Volume 23, which we're expanding to a 3-disc set for the first time ever, thanks to the support of listeners just like you. One of the easiest ways to help spread awareness of the artists featured here on Southern Songs and Stories, their music, and this series, is to subscribe to the podcast and to give it a good rating and a comment on the platforms where you listen. This is Southern Songs and Stories, the music of the South and the artists who make it.
When you need me, I'll be running dry horses. Let me wander across yonder, I hear voices.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Saxon.
And I'm Michael Shields, and we are the hosts of Welcome to the Party Pal, the mind-bending film and television podcast you didn't know you needed.
Welcome to the Party Pal is a celebration of the art of cinema and filmmaking, where movies and television shows are deconstructed and analyzed to evaluate their grandeur.
Guests will include the filmmakers and industry insiders that craft the works of art that we celebrate here when you join the party.
Welcome to the Party Pal is part of the Osiris Podcast Network.
There is a depth and intelligence to MC Taylor, not to mention his remarkable spirit, that made preparing for his interview a bit daunting. It seemed like a situation ripe with the possibility for me to come up short. A question that goes nowhere because I read something into his lyrics that wasn't there could lead to stammering and falling back to a topic that he's tired of because people asked him about it 100 times, which could lead to blurting out whatever came to mind, like, "What did you have for breakfast?" for all I know. And it is easy to get some things wrong about what an artist is putting across when listening to lyrics, especially when you're new to them, even when you know some of the artist's history and the conventional wisdom of who they are as a person. Those building blocks may only add up to a kind of rickety foundation for constructing insights. Reading about MC Taylor, it is common to see observations along the lines of how his lyrics describe personal struggle with dark emotions and uncertainty, or how his music reflects a view of life as a difficult but worthwhile experience, and so on. Like, Taylor is heavy. Man, he must be deep. And in a way, they're right, but after talking with him, I got the feeling that there was a lot missing from the character I had seen in these sketches. Here's how MC Taylor described what went into the new His Golden Messenger album, Terms of Surrender, and he put forward much more nuance about all of this in our conversation.
I made it last year, sort of late summer, early fall. I recorded most of it up in upstate New York at Aaron Dessner's studio with most of the recurring players in Hiscold Messenger. And then we worked on it some at Sound City in LA. And we've put the last things on it at Roger Moutinho's studio in Nashville. It was sort of a complicated record to write for a whole bunch of different reasons that I probably won't go into right now, but it wasn't necessarily a hard record to make. In fact, it was quite fun to make it. But, it deals with all kinds of changes and anxieties in my life, we'll say. Both personal stuff and things that I feel like I'm seeing in the world.
Well, tell us about Dessner's place, and also why did you go to so many different studios?
Well, when I had decided that I wanted to see what it would be like to make a sort of wandering type of record, like a record that been made in a bunch of different locations, and see if that affected the way that it sounded. I was just curious, and I had a much longer list of places that I wanted to go work, but it just, in the end, it wasn't totally feasible. Aaron Dessner's studio is absolutely incredible. It's one of the most beautiful places to work that I could ever hope to be. Yeah, so he's a musician himself, of course, and I think he just kind of knows what the vibe in a recording studio should be. So the control room is not separate from the tracking room. Everybody's in the same room together, and I don't know, there's something really communal about it. It was a great time working there.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So Terms of Surrender, the new record, and I read where you talked about the gist of the title being about things you're willing to sacrifice for what you think you want, something of that nature.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of that sort of existential, the big question marks that hang over a lot of your work.
Probably too many.
Well, what are the question marks about this? What are you getting at?
Well, I mean, from a personal, I think that question, about what we're prepared to sacrifice in order to live the lives we think we want, I think that question feels universal. For me, as someone that, travels for a living, that question is always nagging me, because I have to leave home and leave my family to do this. And this is how I make a living. So I think about it a lot, I said I wanted to be a musician. This is what it looks like for me. Am I prepared to sacrifice, time with my family, seeing not being around my kids at certain important times in their growing up? It's kind of it's a pretty big sacrifice.
And you've got 2 kids now?
I have 2 kids, yeah. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. And I am with them a lot. When I'm not on the road, I'm with them, and I'm dad, 24 hours a day. So I'm not working a day job, so I'm not punching the clock 9 to 5 every day. But this is a weird schedule that this life has.
Happy birthday, baby. Oh, love your brother now. It's a strange gift, baby. Yeah, you know me better than I know myself. Well, I'm trying to repay you all these miles that I roam. When I'm far away, babe, Know that I love you and sing this little song. One was a lonely number two. You were born thunder three. It was lightning quick. You lit up the house like a matchstick. Four, child, you're a wonder. Held me tight when the world went under. Five, sweet, I'm only gonna tell you I love you.
A bit of Happy Birthday Baby, the song MC Taylor wrote for his daughter's 5th birthday, one of the 10 tracks on Terms of Surrender. In another interview, he said the song was, quote, mostly a love letter to her, part apology, part plea for forgiveness, and part recounting of the day she was born when all the roads boiled over with rainwater and thunder and lightning filled the air, end quote. This is the band's 8th album, their 4th on Merge Records, but the first without longtime collaborator Scott Hirsch, who has worked with MC or Mike Taylor going back to previous bands The Court and Spark and their punk outfit Ex Ignata, both from when they lived in California. Still a main part of the puzzle and a bandmate since 2013, though, is Phil Cook. He began working with Mike within a day of meeting him at a Hiscold and Messenger show. I spoke with him as he was hitting the road with Hiscold and Messenger to travel from Austin to New Mexico, and asked him about the fact that when I saw them play a few months ago, they only performed the single I Need a Teacher, but nothing else from the album.
With Hallelujah Anyhow, we had a really great opportunity to open for the Truckers for a couple of weeks, and we had a sort of a little bit, we had a 4-piece band, which is a little, is just slightly stripped down for us. But I love a quartet a lot. I think that's my favorite. Sometimes my favorite spatial understanding is 4 people, and we did like workshop all those tunes. We just played all completely new stuff that entire run with the Truckers. That was really cool, and that definitely contributed to the fact that when we recorded that record, we just recorded it in 2 days. You know what I mean? It was just easy to go in and do it. But with Terms of Surrender, we recorded it at multiple different studios with different personnel and all the other things. And a lot of the songs were really built in the studio. Some of them were kind of written in the studio even. So that's kind of, I think, why that was just a little bit different. It was made a little bit different. You are correct. But each time we make a record, something new is revealed. And, we're able to focus on just like a different shift in perspective on the process, and I think that that's healthy, and I love it. Like, I love the entire thing. It's all a huge learning process, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
That's one from Phil's all-instrumental album, As Far As I Can See, and his tune Hungry Mother Blues, performed live at the Cave in Chapel Hill. If you haven't ever been to the Cave, just imagine an underground venue, basically rectangular, no windows, a lot like a cave. It has been there for more than 50 years and was shuttered for a few months in 2018, but new owners came in and brought it back to life. If you live in Chapel Hill or Carborough and have not been to the Cave, then you really haven't lived there yet. Here's a recent Hiscold and Messenger performance and a very tasteful version of their new song, Cat's Eye Blue.
This wicked one, too bad to be spoken. You let the heart attack in. One taste and it's broken. And the little birds sing. And the world couldn't bear it. And the song that it sang made me so unwary. You lost something, baby. So only come if you wanna. Make me work for it, baby. I'm not getting any younger. And the little birds sing. And the world couldn't bear it. And the song that it sang made me so unwary. Let your sorrow get out blue sky, let go. Let the light of love open your eyes. Cash that check tomorrow. Sing that talk, it's real low. Let the light of love open your eyes. A bit of shepherd, baby. I sing 'cause I've seen it. I ain't perfect, baby, but you can hear that when I'm singing. Little bird on the wing, almost too quiet to notice. And I'll follow the thing that made me so unwary. Dip your sorrow, cat's eye, blue sky, let go. Let the light open your eyes. Cash that check tomorrow. Same damn talk, it's real low. Let the light open your eyes. Dip your sorrow, cat's eye, blue sky, let go. Let the light open your eyes. Cash that check tomorrow. Same damn talk, it's real low. Let the light open your eyes.
Great. Thank you.
What are some of the things that you did as a folklorist that stand out, and maybe some things that we could learn about our own, or some tips on how to dig in and unearth some of the neat things in our own cultures right around us?
Oh boy. Well, I didn't come into it with any particular expertise. Like, there are people in the world of folklore, like academics that got into it because, for example, they love a certain type of fiddle playing that's specific to a region, right? Or they love a certain fiddle tune and all of the variants of it. And, while I love old-time music, my brain doesn't really work that way. I just liked being around people and hearing them talk. And, it made me a much better listener. I've never been a big talker anyway, but I really love to listen to people tell stories, and it's, most people will talk. If you offer a genuine, sort of a genuine interest in communication, people will tell you everything, the most personal stuff. And so, I usually would start my interviews with people by just asking them, "What'd you have for breakfast this morning?" And that's all it took in most cases. For one reason, because food is such a multi-layered topic. It's cultural. It's it has everything to do with race and class and the way that we experience life. But then it's also food, and it tastes good, or it doesn't taste good. If I learned anything doing folklore work, it would be that there are magical things happening everywhere, all around us, and people create beautiful, intentional communities and cultural movements around the smallest things that, maybe a lot of other people would never understand as something important enough to pay attention to. But that's what makes community so beautiful. There are many different types of community. So there's old time music, pre-war string band music. There's quilting. There's cooking. There's lowriding. There's rap music. It's all folklore. It's not bound by any time period at all. It's just vernacular culture.
Maybe blurting out "what did you have for breakfast" is actually a pretty good icebreaker after all. One of the things that both MC Taylor and Phil Cook talked about was their understanding of Southern music and culture and how they have adopted it. So it feels like the right time to jump into this recent live version of Southern Grammar before getting to that part of our conversation.
Yes, one day I tried to leave. Oh, I tried to leave, but I could not. They said go to the holy house. Yes, and I said a long way around. Why, teacher, come teach me. There's another way to be happy. My body bones asking. Yes, I've been looking for the same. Watch it come and queen and grow. Why queen and grow alive. Why we the beach, you let it go. Yes, and you the long way home back. I said and grandma, father and child. Yes, let's just be simple for a little while. I see, yes, there work for me. There am a little day. I'm going through the unfamiliar country. I see. Is there life for me? A wife and a baby. I'm going that way to the people. I'll teach you, come teach me. I'll teach you, come meet me. There's another way to be happy. Yes, I've been looking for the same. I said, father and child. Yes, twinkle, twinkle, a queenie queen's alive. Yes, sweet peach, yeah, let it go. Oh, you take alone. Yes, there's a river, father and child. Yes, let's just be simple for a little while. My son, father and child. Let's just be simple for a little while.
I asked MC Taylor about this, and it's interesting that you've both called North Carolina home for a good long while. You're originally from the Midwest, and Taylor originally from California. So I love to get his perspective on what it means to have that Southern culture reflected in his music. And I want to ask you the same thing, and also go on to see if you have any observation about what your music may be putting back into that culture.
At this point, I think a lot of life is just like, trial and error and seeing and kind of waking up to a lot of things as they unfold and just like understanding, time and perspective. And so I think what I've learned about, moving to North Carolina is that it's important to have outsiders. I think outsiders are really important people in terms of just like, I'm not from North Carolina. I'm not from the South at all. But I know that, like, for instance, when I was a kid and growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, in our high school, got like an exchange student, and they would be from some, like South America or like Western Europe. And that perspective of somebody like walking just in cold blind to like a weird wintry upper Midwestern city helps me understand town in a way that I could at all if it was just me with no actual outside observer there. And so like if you think about just like that example can kind of follow, there's a lot of ways that can kind of follow you around. And I've noticed that being a Northerner living in the South, sometimes I've noticed that like there's little details and nuance that you kind of get to be the one who notices them sometimes, because when you grow up around a place, it is possible to kind of like let things that you see every day become mundane and blend in with the wallpaper. And there's sometimes when I'll make comments or I'll talk about something and people will kind of look at me like, huh, you think that's just whatever? It's just this thing I see every day. It's like, I don't see that every day. I don't feel that every day. I don't say that every day or hear that every day, or whatever it is. And so, and I think that I've noticed that reflecting back an outsider's view on people that have grown up there is like a really important part of keeping a dialogue going. And so musically that can work too. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably what you're getting at with that question with Mike and I, is like, just it helps to continue the dialogue of Southern music and its role and continual role in how it informs all music that's made in this country and the world over. So happy to participate in that dialogue.
Speaking of culture, you grew up in California.
Yep.
And you've lived in North Carolina since about college, is that right?
I've lived in North Carolina since 2007. Yeah.
So you've got a lot of time here in the South. You call it home. I wonder about your observations about anything either on a macro level or even just more anecdotal or more specific about what you might perceive of Southern culture being reflected in His Golden Messenger's music.
Well, I've never been shy about, explaining that my music is rooted in traditional music. And I take a lot of musical inspiration from, like we were talking about, old-time music, jazz, R&B, gospel, all music that, in my opinion, has its roots in the South. So my job as a musician, I feel like, is to take those pieces of music, take the pieces from the music that I love so much and recombine them in a way that feels genuine to me. I don't want to put a cowboy hat on and put a costume on and play genre specific music. My music is meant to be confounding to people. But not in a mean way. It's just like I'm taking the pieces of American music that I love, and I'm doing something new with it.
I think your music, and when you listen intently, it's music that's going to make you have to think. And honestly, a lot of people resent being made to think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just, when people ask me what kind of music I play, I don't have a great answer for that. That is a succinct one-line answer. There are some bands out there that can just say, we're a bluegrass band, or we're a country band, or we're a blues band. And I don't really know what this music is. It has a lot of constituent parts to it. And there are some people for whom that is a great thing, and there are some people that just don't have the bandwidth for it. Even though I don't think His Golden Messenger's music is very hard to listen to.
No, well, a lot of the subject matter is deep, and musically, that you can separate those two if you want to. But when you start to kind of spend some time with it, it's obvious that there's a lot going on there. Yeah. It's interesting what you said. You make a good point about how much music originated out of the South.
Yeah. And
the reasons for that are many, but do you have any thoughts on why?
I mean, there was, I think there was a working class culture that existed in the South that spent their free time in certain ways. I think that, the influence of certainly African and Native, musical traditions is undeniable. There was, and then there was, the sort of mass black exodus in the early to middle 20th century that brought a lot of these vernacular African American musical traditions like blues and amplifying it in big cities around the country. And, those musicians, people like Muddy Waters or B.B. King or, the staple singers, all of whom are African American, they're all from the South. And those are three of thousands and thousands of musicians. There was a musical blending that was happening in the South, I think, in part because of the complicated racial legacy that exists here. There were a lot of people, a lot of different types of people in one place. and bringing with them all of their experiences and the way that they would articulate their feelings on instruments.
There's a great parallel between what M.C. Taylor learned as a folklorist and what the neurologist, psychologist, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl taught his students. Separated by more than half a century and in completely different circumstances, they came to essentially the same realization. Frankl, from his book Man's Search for Meaning, says, quote, "For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it." End quote. When M.C. Taylor traveled around rural North Carolina documenting culture, he spent a lot of time with semi-professional musicians. Good, but they weren't making a living at it. Rather, he told me, it was something they did for the joy of it and for the community of it. The experience was a great reminder at a time in his life when he needed it, that music should be fun. First and foremost, it has to move you spiritually. If you're just making music for money, then it's kind of worthless. That's all for now. Thanks for listening to Southern Songs and Stories. We invite you to like and follow the show on our social media, either on our Facebook page or Twitter at South Scenes or Instagram at South Stories, or all of the above. I'll be glad to correspond with you by email from southernsongsandstories@gmail.com or from Joe K at wncw.org. Southern Songs and Stories is a part of the podcast lineup on both Public Radio WNCW and the Osiris Podcast Network, with their full lineup available at osirispod.com. And you can also hear new episodes on Bluegrass Planet Radio at bluegrassplanetradio.com. Coming up soon, we present episodes on North Carolina band Mipso, Austin, Texas band Los Coast, and South Carolina's Marcus King, who now lives in Nashville. Plus, WNCW will make capsule versions of these podcasts available on the FM dial once a week. I'm your host, Joe Kendrick, encouraging you to go see some live music and support the artists you enjoy here on Southern Songs and Stories.